Heroic Nation podcast returns. Another episode. I think we're up to 13 now, something like that. The world's most consistently inconsistent podcast. But at the same time, you can't rush greatness, right? So as much as we're inconsistent and that leads to lower following, we're still the greatest podcast to ever be broadcast, ever, in the history of podcasts. Anyway, and in the history of amazing podcasts, this is the best one that we've done to date, easily. And I know I say that every week or every month or however often that we put these things out. But this is seriously, I promise, this is seriously the best one, right? Serious. So, talk to Jason from Conjugate Tactical. Jason is a really interesting dude. He works for/with Westside Barbell and has for a long, long time. He is also has a military history background and had a career with the military. And then once he was done with that, he became a police officer for, I believe, Porter County, if I'm not mistaken, which I totally could be, as I often am. But Porter County Sheriff, did that for a number of years, and then the gym took off, the West Side stuff continued to grow, and he retired from law enforcement and started doing that full time. So just kind of put it in context, Jason, like I said, works for/with West Side, and storied puts it mildly, right, as far as West Side goes. And he has been doing seminars, West Side Barbell seminars, with Louis Simmons for years prior to Louis' passing. So you don't rub elbows with circles like that. Like Louis Simmons is, if you're not familiar, Louis Simmons is easily one of the, if not, in my opinion, the greatest minds that have ever been involved in strength and conditioning and like powerlifting. There's no one better. But just an amazing mind when it comes to building strength, building athletes, strength and conditioning in general. Like, holy shit, like Louis Simmons is amazing. So we talked about that for a little bit, talked about training in general, talked about Conjugate, different ways to do different things. Really good conversation overall. So now, with that said, and plus he's a cool ass dude and goofy as shit and just really good stuff, right? So, like I said, best podcast we've done. But it has come to my attention that we have had several guests on, and we all kind of have a Conjugate/CrossFit background, and that it would be worth going over in like basic terms, like what is Conjugate, right? The Conjugate system, the West Side system. And like, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert at it. Now, I've been through, several certifications, including the Conjugate Tactical course, as well as the CrossFit version of the Conjugate systems. And I've been in and around that system for a number of years now, since I was stretching back, I think, to 2013. So, and with that said, like, it's kind of just now getting to the point where I can understand it and explain it in more basic terms. So if you think about the Conjugate system, it was designed for powerlifting and weightlifting, and as a system for athletes to get stronger. And that's a big thing, right? Is like, it's not just a platform sport system. It is a system to create strong athletes and create strength in the best way possible, right? So I look at it in terms of a 4-ish day split, okay? So you have 2 max effort days, right? Those are your heavy days, and those are broken up into an upper body focus and a lower body focus. So an example would be on Mondays, and this is typically how I program, is Mondays are a max effort lower body lift, right? That is your primary strength component, and everything kind of revolves around that for that day, right? So let's say it is a box squat, right? Back squat to a box, right? max effort. So we're looking for anywhere from a 1 to 5, but more often than not, it's a 1 to 3 rep max for the day, right? So that's a really heavy load. Like you are going as heavy as you can for the day safely. And most times now, especially when the numbers for me don't mean as much, I'm not training for any performance specific goal, that's going to mean an ultra technical rep max. So my technique is going to dictate the load of the bar, right? And so then you work heavy that day, right? That's your primary lift. And then the rest of the day is devoted to accessories, right? Accessories are going to be designed around your specific weaknesses, right? So that rounds you out as an athlete. I'll go more into that in a minute, right? So that's your max effort day. The other max effort day is going to go at the end of the week. So you're looking at 72 hours between max effort movements. And that next one, let's say, it's going to be a press of some type. Could be a pull, but probably a press, right? Typically, it's going to be a bench press. And, occasionally, like every third week, you're going to throw in an overhead press, right? So some type of press, either a vertical press or a horizontal press. And that's going to be the same thing. You're going to look for a 1 to 5, but typically 1 to 3 rep max, and then you're going to round it out with accessories. Now, the middle of the week, your Tuesday and Thursday typically, so Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday is kind of the split we're looking at. But I mean, it could be any day with these, right? It doesn't matter if you take a day where you put your rest day, I guess. So those are dynamic effort days. So if you look at those as moving sub-maximal weight, so lighter weight, as fast as you can and as technical as you can, and accumulating as much volume, so as many reps as you can, not as you can, but like many, many reps that you want to do on these dynamic effort days. And these are the days that you're going to start potentially using accommodating resistance, which means bands and chains. And you see Westside guys will use bands and chains and bands and chains from different directions all over the place, pulling from the bottom, pulling from the top, pulling from the front. And that adds weight to the bar as your leverage improves, which all helps to build velocity, right? Build speed. And that's where a lot of this stuff really breaks down to is physics and speed and making sure that we are moving the bar as fast as we can and creating the most force possible, right? So that's where you go with that. So the max effort days, you're looking about 15 to 20 minutes, depending on how long it takes you to warm up and working to a heavy load. And the dynamic effort days, you're taking about 10 to 15 minutes and you're doing like 10 sets of 2, like every minute on the minute or every 45 seconds, you're doing a couple of reps, but they're as technical as you can and as fast as you can possibly move them, right? So, and then on the dynamic effort days, you're also doing your accessory work, and it's going to, again, like fill in your specific weaknesses. So that's where you focus on more things like hamstring specifics, like, oh, my hamstrings are weak, therefore I need to build my hamstrings. And now you're really going to like hammer those out on your max effort days and your dynamic effort days as an accessory lift. So you're working more in the ranges of 6 to 12 to maybe even 20, or just accumulating, 100 reps of hamstring curls or like whatever, right? So if you really just break it down, like, what is Conjugate? Conjugate is 2 heavy days and 2 light days where you're working on speed, technique, and mechanics on all of it, but really understanding like there's times that you have to go heavy and there's times that you need to like chill out on that, but you still need to work the movement patterns and you still need to work your weaknesses. So it really is an effective way to program. And then as far as like what movements you choose, they vary the movements constantly, right? So it is not, if you do a straight bar back squat to a box today, that won't come around for weeks or months, depending on how many different styles of squats that you're going to do. So that could be a box squat, a free squat, a front squat, and then using different bars and safety squat bar and buffalo bars and cambered bars. And like there's all kinds of different things that change the stimulus so that you're not chewing yourself up doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. So that's one thing where, from my training standpoint, it really made a lot of sense to me because I was getting hurt all the time, right? And as soon as I started changing the variables and changing the stimulus of the different bars and the different lifts, and it was like, we're still working a squat, but we don't need to work the same front squat every week. That actually will beat you up pretty badly. So it made a huge improvement in my strength and in my training and everything that I've been doing, whether it's for jiu-jitsu or police work or CrossFit or just because I like training. It always seems to work well. Now, you have to have like a kind of a base level of understanding for it, and that's really what this explanation was to just give you a base level of what it is. Now, you can get as complicated as you want with this because, again, we're talking about like science and physics and force production and the force velocity curve. And we talk about a little bit of that with Jason, but hopefully it didn't get like too off in the weeds and too confusing. But that's kind of the rundown of the conjugate system and what all that kind of means, and hopefully it makes sense. And all right. Okay, so before I convolute things any worse or any further, check out the episode with Jason and let me know what you think. Yes.
All right. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go from the phone, dude. I don't know if you just heard me. My computer. Well, I don't know what the fuck's going on with the computer, man. It's been downloading for like 20 minutes.
Well, that's step number one of this podcast then is to get all 7 listeners to donate you $100 to buy a new computer.
Shit, my MacBooks are top notch. I blame the internet.
Yeah, the internet. Al Gore invented that?
Yeah, it's fucking weird.
What's up, man? How are things going?
Not bad at all. Not bad at all out here, dude. We're just busy. We've got the fundraiser tomorrow, so it's just scramble day to get a bunch of stuff done at the last minute at the end of the night tonight when we close the gym, but no complaints out this way, dude.
Cool. And this is your deadlift?
Yeah.
Fundraiser?
Yeah, we'll start that tomorrow about 9 a.m.
How do you run that? How are you fundraising for it, I guess?
I'm sorry?
How are you fundraising for it? Like, what all are you running?
I don't know what you mean. People are giving us money.
Well, I mean, like, are you having people come in and compete and donate for it? Or does their entry fee go towards fundraising?
Yeah, they'll do a $40 entry fee. We give them a shirt, and then we'll do the deadlifts, like basically 1/3 of a power meet.
Okay.
Hey, you zip it. Come here. Real high quality recording studio here.
Fuck it. I'm scraped all the beer cans and energy drinks off my desk, and same boat. I know.
So what do you like? How heavy are people going to get tomorrow? Is it going to be like a serious like deadlifting meet, or is it like?
It's people of all calibers. It's more fun than anything. Like this is the 6th year we've done it. The biggest pull we've ever had was 850. And smallest, like we had a gal finish her last chemo treatment and pulled like 180. So it covers the full gambit of everything. But we'll probably have a couple in the 700s and a bunch in the 600s tomorrow. So
yeah, cool. What are you fundraising for?
So we're doing 2 charities this year, but the overall cause, everything we do revolves around the holistic treatment of PTSD. And then the 2 charities we do that for or through and veteran care. But the Matt Pacino Foundation, we're friends with one of the fellow that got killed, Matt. We work with one of his former teammates in the coaching stuff that we do. So we take care of those guys. And the last 2 years, they've been partnering with the Gary Sinise Foundation to build adaptive smart homes for wounded veterans and paralyzed veterans. So that one's been pretty cool. And then we're going to give a chunk of what we raised to another group out in California. The CSRT Foundation, they have an initiative called the Project Resilience. So they provide a lot of gym memberships and free to some dudes that could use it. So Kickstart off a little bit, get them some cash to work with, and see what we can do.
How many people usually get that come?
This year we've got 48 signed up right now, and then we'll have. We usually get a few day of.
Okay.
So sometimes people just be in they'll be in the crowd and be like, "Fuck it, I'm pulling," and then just sign up right there, like second wave, get all jacked up.
We're off tomorrow. Let's go.
Where is it?
How it's about 3 hours away.
In Columbus.
Chesterton. No, right? It's at your place.
Yeah.
Yeah. Over by Chicago. All right, we're coming. You stole us.
We'll be there.
Well, cool, man. Yeah, I guess some of the stuff I want to talk about was like, I know like you're real big on like, I call it history and systems more or less, right? So like history of where everything came from. Like, I guess I'm always interested in hearing, especially from your perspective, like your story, kind of how you got linked into Westside, and then and like almost like some history of Westside and where it's kind of going.
Yeah. On some of the Westside stuff, we'll need to. There's certain things like it's not like top secret, but there's just certain things that are befitting the future of the company and stuff like that we might have to glaze over because things just got to unfold in sequence. But
yeah,
we'll answer anything and everything. So just whatever you like, man.
Yeah. So like, I guess, how'd you get started with what you're doing now? Like, how did you get to where you're going? I know like you were in the military and then you were a cop, like kind of back up to that point and then like give us a rundown.
Yeah. So I got out of the military in February 2007, and then tooled around for a little bit and just decompressed and went out from being overseas and all that silliness. Then in May of 2009, we ended up opening the gym as it was then. So we did like everybody. We had an affiliate back in the day. Started in the garage, then moved from the garage to brick and mortar in May of 2009. And that sort of transitioned into, I don't know how you word it, but it was basically the precursor to what we've got now. So there was nothing wrong with running an affiliate and all of the stuff that went on back then. But the CrossFit world led us to Westside Barbell when they used to do the CrossFit powerlifting course at Westside. Lou was still at the helm of it and had a few lifters sitting in. And then that was October 2009 that I went to that course for the first time ever, being out at Westside. Found that and that was the missing link for us, was a strength component, and that's what we went there to learn and look for. So having been there at the course and then going back for several years to train and learn, visit and learn and visit over and over and over again, we'd ended up maintaining a rapport with several of the dudes from that initial course in the fall of 2009. And just sort of happenstance, we were at the fights. One of the guys here, he just retired from the UFC last year, but back in the day, Dana White used to do a behind the scenes video, and everyone was just leaving the sauna, and our guy was just wearing, the black Westside hoodie, because everyone just owns a Westside or gym dude. And when you get a guy out of the sauna, you keep him wrapped up in a sweatsuit, so he just keeps the heat in and keeps sweating the weight out. So that video got uploaded by Dana, and Lou absolutely loved fighting. So the video went on Facebook. Westside saw it. At the time, we didn't know it was Tom Barry, but the GM of Westside now was like, what's going on? Who's this? Because back then, this was 2012. Excuse me. Back in 2012, 2013, there really was no roadmap, at least that we were aware of, for strength and conditioning in MMA. So we were using the Westside system back then because it just made a lot of sense to us for what we were doing. And that ultimately got us on the radar back at Westside, and the years of going out there talking and training. When we went back out there, I was like, oh, like same dude. Yeah. Like, because we were, not name dropping, but we're like, hey, our guys in the UFC, fighting for a title. But back then everybody had the next UFC standout, soon to be champion, all that kind of stuff. So I could understand where our statements were being lost in the gray, sort of the white noise probably.
Yeah.
And it was like, no, we're at the UFC level. This is everything we've been talking about. So they're like, oh shit, a dude named Chris Mason back then, he's like, dude, they're calling for you guys. Like, you need to get out at the office now. So we rolled out the next week to the office and went through the grinder. And Lou and Tom just beat the hell out of us as soon as we got there because we were 10 minutes late, of course. So they beat us up pretty good when we got there. And then Tommy took Eddie out with the rest of the fighters to train. I trained with Lou more and more. And we, probably 10, 12, 15 visits at this point. Just kept going, but this was a different kind of visit. So he was hammering me with questions and training stuff because they're going to vet you to see if you're not a puss first and then wear you out and see if you're dumb or smart. So we had lunch, got a free t-shirt, and really didn't think much more of it. And then got home to a huge email of everything that's going on, moving forward, this, that, and the other. And basically, you work here now. We just don't know what you do yet. And so that's what brought me into the world of Westside, was going to that first course through CrossFit. And then just the constant going out there to learn and train. And then, a guy who's a hell of a lot cooler than I am fights on TV, and right place at the right time kind of scenario.
Cool. What year did you get hired on? Was Porter County, right?
Yeah. So same year we opened the gym. I opened the gym in May of 09, got hired October 09. And like, I was still in pre-basics, just wearing slacks and a polo in the detective bureau, answering the phone. And that's when we were searching for the CrossFit powerlifting course. So like my first weekend of vacation or something like that, or first weekend off at the sheriff's department, I went straight to Westside and had to be back Monday morning for work. So definitely odd to be a rookie cop and a rookie business owner at the same damn time.
Yeah. That would be overwhelming. I mean, I did it.
It rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, to say the least.
Yeah. Why? Just because they thought you should be like focusing on being a cop and.
Yeah, that, and I don't know. There's I'm not trying to be like too much of a dick about it, but there are some freaking awesome dudes at that department that I still talk to till this day. And there's a lot of less than awesome dudes at that department that I'm stoked I don't have to talk to anymore. And I think a lot of folks didn't like that some guy, and I mean, the guys that brought me in are freaking world class. So this new guy already plugged into the good old boy network who has a gym, like, I don't really know why, but it rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. So it was a sordid start, to say the least.
Yeah.
You have that stuff everywhere.
What can you do? It is what it is. It's it was a good chapter in the book, but I'm grateful that we're doing what we're doing now, for sure.
What was I gonna say? Oh, so that's how you got tied in, and you started doing seminars with Louis, like a lot, right?
Yeah. So this, if you fast forward to like 2014, Westside was doing the Maximal Athletic Development Seminar in Columbus at one of the hotel conference rooms there. And they'd invited me to come out and attend it. So basically, like, your seat's here, just come out, take the seminar. I'm like, okay, cool. Which I found out was just basically a prank, because about 15 minutes before my wife and I were getting ready to get in the car and drive out there, Louie and Tom called, and they're like, hey, you're speaking for about 30 minutes tomorrow. 20 minutes tomorrow, almost verbatim. Speaking for 20 minutes tomorrow on MMA, have something ready, click. And it was like, oh, shit. Going for 45 minutes, an hour or so, who knows what it was. And that was, I think I have no way to find out the truth on it, but I think it was just one of those kind of nut up or shut up moments.
Yeah.
That segued into working on the seminar team for several years for the Westside for Sports series we were doing. So we were traveling around Midwest and the East Coast doing those. And then privately, the whole time at Westside, my work has always been to handle nearly all, if not all, of our military and first responder inquiries for training and education and things of that nature, because that's like one of the things that people don't really, I shouldn't say don't know, but many folks don't know, is that everyone at Westside, see you, buddy. Everyone at Westside, sorry, I'm down at the gym, also serves in some sort of coaching or training capacity for the most part. So with my background, which just had some experience in different places, it was a square peg, square hole to pair up those inquiries with my take on the system and just keep going. So that was the start, was really going from you're on board to working with the equipment and doing all the business side of things, and then segue seminars while maintaining the business role at Westside as well.
Cool. so question, like you started with like the West Side approach and like the conjugate approach for like strength and conditioning for MMA, right? And then how does that differ, like training a combat athlete to like tactical population? Like what's different?
Main thing is the time frames. So if you use the process, and with the conjugate system, if you have a good understanding of what's going on and a level head, it's not terribly complicated to make good progress. But our process we've always used is essentially as identifying the demands of the sport or the profession, and then ultimately reverse engineering a way to go from the current state to a better state that will address those demands. So with fighting back then, and it's gotten different now. What the guys are up to now is insane compared to what we were doing in the beginning. But the difference, the process really isn't that different. We identify the demands and try and build the specific strengths or energy systems to be in excess of what those demands may require. But with the tactical population, and where this whole realm is growing into now, is it can't be a broad stroke blanket approach either, because the needs of a beat cop versus a fireman versus a big military versus some of the cooler units and things like that, the demands can get drastic very, very quickly, where burpees and kettlebell swings don't take care of everybody.
Yeah.
So that's really the biggest difference, is being able to focus on the time frames or the time demands of what some of these guys and gals may be going through, and then being mindful of the wear and tear that the professions are going to ultimately input on the body, whether you like it or not. The beat down that the body takes from mill stuff or even law enforcement, that's one thing I didn't see coming for the 5 years I was a cop, is just how fast things go from being forced to being sedentary in the squad car. Freaking, whether you like it or not, you're stuck in there for a long period of time. And being able to instill a lot of preventative maintenance or corrective exercise versus taking the combat athlete who has a shelf life. And we were fortunate to work for roughly 13 years at a very high level, but taking some of the vigor away of just tough because the sport requires it and the sport has a shelf life. But being able to balance the physical capacities above the professional demands, and then do so in a multi-year approach, essentially for an entire career, because there's no game day in this tactical space. There's a good chance we know what's going to come across your plate, but we don't necessarily know when it's going to happen. So the idea of readiness versus peaking is quite present in what we do. And like full disclosure, as far as myself and the headquarters team, we don't necessarily specialize in like prep work. A lot of our coaches will help dudes get ready for selection or screeners and things of that nature. So the administrative side of tactical and strength conditioning is maybe not drastically different than what I would call operational readiness, but the two sides of the coin have to be addressed, because getting somebody ready for a selection process or a tryout is more comparable to sport than it would be creating a training system for someone who's already working in their desired profession. And then that can go down a rabbit hole for hours about how to balance training for, active duty military versus fire versus this, that, and the other. So we default to the process much more than creating a very specific sort of script to follow. It's having that deeper understanding of what you can use the system for, and instilling a lot of how and why behind it.
Yeah, I like that readiness versus peaking. Like, what was I going to say?
I've never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
I like that. So how would you tailor workouts more for like readiness and not falling into the monotony of it, and not like, plateauing so much, I guess I feel like if I'm trying to just maintain, or like the readiness is kind of how I would see it, like a maintenance phase. I feel like I would plateau a lot. So how would you like keep from that happening, I guess?
Yeah, so a lot of it is taking in the practicality of the circumstances. So just being like law enforcement background, like you're probably not going to take a cop and convince him to skip overtime or a side gig to hit the throwing some dude $100 an hour cash to work security at a wedding or go bench press. Like probably going to take the side cash.
Yeah. Depends on the guy, but yeah.
And it depends on the day. How good do my shoulders feel?
That's exactly it. But I mean, a lot of it is weighing the circumstances. So the workload, the schedule, all that stuff, that has to be present in all the decisions that are made. So we always try to land a hair north of practical, but it has to be executable. And then in order to avoid, fatigue, bonking out, or plateauing, anything of that nature, we really don't have to do anything different than what the West Side methods already provide, and just be mindful ultimately of the energy system. So, I mean, if we use drastic comparisons, if we look at like big military who has a deployment schedule, and for 20 plus years it was most likely to a combat zone, that's a stark contrast to working the road 4 on 2 off or 5 on 2 off, whatever the schedule is. So we have to be mindful of all of that stuff and then create the training plan around that. But the system itself, with balancing maximal strength and the requirements of each special strength, is designed not to offer plateaus. But if we see a guy or gal who's ultimately just blanket statement energy, whatever unit of measure you want to use to gauge readiness, if we see that person starting to fizzle out or fatigue out, or any of the markers of overtraining and plateauing kind of falls in that space as well, then we just adjust the system. Typically, we reduce the number of true 1 rep maxes on max effort day each month based off of the immediate feedback. So if you just got off mids and you're a rookie cop who's also working half of a day shift, he or she probably not going to have a great deadlift that afternoon if they can make it into the gym.
Right.
So being mindful of all the real stressors that are out there that can throw you further and further away from a perfect day in the gym. Short answer made long. That's the biggest way we monitor that plateau, because more often than not, plateauing is just an off day. If you're using the conjugate system, like at your worst, you're going to hit 85-90% of what you're capable of, which is why it makes sense for our space. And when this whole thing was coming together, it was just a no-brainer for us. But then it turned out we had to do years of thinking and talking and training to figure out how to communicate that. So a lot of the work's already been done by Louis for years. It needed to take on a different flavor for our space in this tactical realm. And really, that's how we do it, is adjust day by day, because the conjugate system in itself is not so rigid and tunnel visioned that you have to adhere blindly to months-long training plans. We can adjust on the fly as needed based off of where we see a lag in either any sort of special strength that we're training. And for us, the big 3 on the special strengths list is maximal strength, strength endurance, and then explosive power. So that's what we really want to focus on. And in doing so, we're able to trim away a lot of the fat. Not saying that other stuff isn't important, but we're able to trim away a lot of the fat and focus solely on what we consider to be the big 3. And with that extra effort, where we might lag in strength, speed, or Olympic lifting, where we might lag there, we make up for in the other areas that we think, based off of professional demand, one should excel in. Because I'd rather have a guy really, really fast or move around like a high level boxer or fighter, which is where a lot of our inspiration comes from for the conditioning work. I'd rather have him quickly for profession than move through a series of extremely elaborate and difficult movements to learn and master, to get a very similar result or end state. We're picking grunt level stuff 9 times out of 10, and being able to balance that all out. Ultimately, we're executing the system that's proven to work, but being able to balance all of that is how we avoid plateau, more so than looking for an elaborate and extremely intricate approach. We try to keep it as extremely simple as possible, and that's our biggest thing, is being mindful of the energy and fatigue, and then focusing on the right types of strength for the demand.
Okay. Yeah.
Can you kind of touch base on, like you said, that those 3 strengths, right? Special strength, maximal strength, strength endurance, and explosive power. Like, I know people get wrapped around the axle about the differences between all of that. Can you give like quick examples of kind of each?
Yeah. So to give the examples, to backpedal, and I mean, I know Anthony, we don't know each other, but Anthony and I have gotten to know each other over the last year or so. And I'm usually guilty of making a simple yes or no question into just an elaborate pile of gibberish, and then losing my train of thought 10 times out of 10. But to understand the special strengths, you have to start with an understanding of the velocities of essentially the movement. So if we just use squat, for example. If I put a bar on your back and you sit down and stand back up, ultimately at its purest form, it's a squat, no matter what you're doing. But when we look at the weight being used and what that weight or that stimulus causes in relation to the speed at which the barbell's moved, that's the precursor to identifying your special strength. So if we're moving a bar at 0.3 to, I guess, sub 0.5 meters per second, so 0.3 to 0.5 meters per second is the classic, that person's definitely training their maximal strength. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If you trust I would say the OGs of all exercise science, dating back to the Eastern European, the Russian bloc stuff, which is where all the West Side system comes from. We identify maximal strength at 0.3 to 0.5 meters per second for movement. And then when you put weight on that causes you to move at that speed, you're training maximal strength, whether you like it or not. Then the explosive power, we're down to a meter to 1.2 meters per second. And your load on the barbell is going to impact the velocity greatly, even with the same movement. So that's where the two sides of the coin are ultimately addressed. And then depending on your methodology is how you train them all year long. But for us, that's the start point, is to understand the velocities. And with those velocities, you're training your maximal strength. Whether you try to zhuzh it up and make it an elaborate, sexy sales pitch, or you keep it dry and boring, which is pretty much where we work, is dry and boring. Understanding the velocities above all else is how you can identify which special strength is being trained. And depending on what methodology you follow is where they're going to follow in the training plan. And then strength endurance, while not necessarily on the force velocity curve or anything like that, but strength endurance is ultimately how long you can exert energy in a state of fatigue without too much of a negative impact. And anything beyond that, I'm trying to think how to say this because I get myself in hot water all the damn time. But with where we put ourselves in the grand scheme of being on different teams and training groups and things of that nature, strength conditioning is one component of human performance, and human performance is one small component of total operational readiness. So balancing out the strength endurance, the maximal strength, the dynamic endurance, the explosive power, etc., it can't spin off the rails into something that's unmanageable or overshadows actual tactical or professional proficiency. So with the strength endurance stuff, we try to keep pretty darn simple approach to all of it. And that kind of backpedals into what we were talking about, the time frames initially, and then pair that with the velocities is how we can put all this stuff together and make it executable. And like I said, it was already done for us. We just so happened to get lucky and start working here. And then how we were able to view this stuff, and the guys that educated us, how we're able to view all of it, is like, oh, we don't know why people aren't training this way all the damn time. So I'm sure I went off the rails there for a minute, but that's my bad.
No, this is totally fine. So like this is when you start talking about like force velocity curve and stuff like that, like it makes me realize how much I should have applied myself in science more.
Right.
Dude,
Maybe I should have taken physics.
I'm 39 years old and I just finished my degree in management last year, let alone all the years of gaffing off physics and all that stuff. Like I failed math in high school. All 3 years was at summer school until I got to the Marines, and trigonometry made freaking sense Rain Man style for me. So luckily all these things are written in books and we can just go back and read them. And I think that's where the seminar thing and all that goes into effect, is being able to translate and communicate a lot of this stuff to save coaches and athletes time. Because like I said, we've gotten to know each other. Like my life's pretty miserable, dude. It's just reading and typing and traveling constantly. So if we can make coaches have a hell of a lot more fun doing this and save them 13 or 14 years of reading, we can throw you the cheat codes pretty darn quick and get you effective. And then based off of your level of interest with this stuff, you can always go back in time and read the same exact books that we have, because they're all on the websites.
Yeah. Going back to something you said earlier, like a hair, you mentioned like you try to stay a hair north of practical. Like talk about the difference, or kind of like what you mentioned in the seminar when you did that bait and switch routine where you were like, tactical is really just practical.
I don't fuck it up and give away the secrets. That's how we break the ice. Well, I mean, we use, again, like I said, we take our work very, very serious, but we're lighthearted dudes, and I don't know too many guys who've been through the ringer who are stoic and stone faced 24/7. Usually, like, everyone's just looking for a way to crack a joke or give each other a hard time. So we try to keep that same approach with what we do. But there's two wonderful statements made by two brilliant men in Yuri Verkhoshansky that any idiot can make another idiot tired, and then Louis, who just, you can't train like a puss. So somewhere between those two extremes, and we've said it in the past, but somewhere between those two extremes is a practical approach to training. But if we let it stay sort of, I don't want to say easy, but if we let training go stagnant where it's easily executable and not necessarily too challenging, you're gonna that might be where we plateau. So if we keep a degree of effort in there, or find a way to force our folks to strive to be a little bit north of what they might seem feasible or practical, that's where we like to land folks a little bit north. Because if you're practical, you don't need us for anything whatsoever. If you're just going to the gym, running through your routine and going home, awesome. There's nothing wrong with that at all. It's keeping you in great basic shape. But if you need us or the coaches or a strength coach in general or a gym to guide you, we've got to introduce some degree of difficulty that you may not do on your own. And that's that north, just a hair north of practical approach that we take. And typically we address that through mini workouts or finding a way to increase the workload for the athlete who may not perceive the system or the methods as applicable based on schedule, this, that, and the other. And that's where we've learned over the years, I mean, per Louis, learned over the years to try and sharpen our skills to communicate and translate for folks. And that's the how and why behind that statement.
I was so mad. I was like, in my head, I was like, I know, I see what he's doing. I was like, this fucking bait and switch. I was like, I came here for tactical shit, not, I was like, practical. Oh, okay.
Great. We'll spray paint your kettlebell green for you.
Yes, I love it. Super.
Well, I mean, it works, and we take the work serious. It's just, so I don't have an athletic pedigree or anything like that. So when I fell into Westside, and historically I wander into situations where I don't belong or don't deserve to be. And same thing with Westside in the last 14 or 15 years of my life, it seems like, is like, you're not good at any sports. And Louis is the one that let me off the hook for powerlifting because I was going to meets and doing average or slightly below. And he's like, just quit effing around. Like, your job is to coach, train, and communicate. Like, that's why you're here. So I was like, okay, thank God. It's like, I suck at this whole squat bench. Really, really focus and dial in on all that stuff. But being able to identify the high points of the system. And again, we're not reinventing the wheel. The last couple of podcasts I've been on, I think I've gone off the rails of complaining indirectly about shit that drives me nuts versus actually trying to make things better. So that's my bad. But to take the system that's already proven, but grab the high points and ultimately just plug those pieces into our demographic. We're not reinventing the wheel. It's already spinning and it's just fine. We're just spinning it sort of in a new direction for our folks. And we've just been fortunate that we get to serve as the voice for Westside Barbell in this space, versus just trying to outshine others by blowing their candle out, or however that freaking analogy goes. So we just keep doing our shit. And sometimes we just got to lie to people. Welcome to Tactical. Sorry. Welcome to a pretty even keel way to train. Like, I can't do backflips and I'm not going to yell at you. So I'm going to train.
I'm not coming tomorrow then.
Shit. There's coffee bar and a beer fridge.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, all right. So, like, when looking at a conjugate split, right? So, like, ideally 2 max effort days, upper and lower, 2 dynamic effort days, upper and lower, and then all your accessories that you need to even things out, and, like, the different special strengths. So let's say, like, life happens, jobs, stuff like that. Like, how do you adapt that on the fly basically and be like, all right, well, we had, like a late call out, an early raid, and didn't train for 2 days. Like, how do I condense that to make it still work? If I have to like take a 4-day split or a 5-day split into a 2-day, like what do I cut? How do I do that? Like any suggestions?
Yeah. So the main thing we're doing is trying to preserve maximal strength at all costs, because that's the one that's going to slip quicker if we're not addressing those end ranges. But if we've got to ditch days, we're ditching dynamic before max effort, because you can always accumulate volume and jump. Like, I don't know how it is out at your department, but mine, like our dudes, we had kettlebells, bands, sled, like mini trunk gyms. I mean, worst case scenario, you could do push-ups and tuck jumps if you have to get something in. So we can find a version of that stimuli. We can find a version of that without a whole lot of effort, for lack of a better term. But to train the maximal strength stuff, that's where you need your spotters, your equipment, weights, things of that nature. Refer back to our talk on velocities. So if it's a day thing, we're probably going to trim the dynamic work ahead of the max effort. And then if it's actual time and training, we're looking for effective exercises to check the boxes as quickly as possible. So if we've only got you in the gym, I know some departments get to train, an hour to their shift if they're running 12s and things like that. It's dedicated for physical wellness. But if it's a time thing, inner workout, then we're trying to check boxes quickly. So we look for high yield exercises that are going to train a multitude of things, not necessarily at once, but I'm probably going to pick squats over leg extensions if I'm pressed for time, to be able to get that built up. And then the volume that we do lose due to professional schedule, we can accumulate through mini workouts, which is ultimately our bread and butter. I'm not going to say it's the secret sauce, but being able to create a culture or a training methodology that condones and utilizes mini workouts either by circumstance or by choice. By the end of the calendar year, if we've missed volume in the main session, you can find it a couple hours later with a mini. And that's why for coppers, having a red band in your trunk is almost standard equipment, it seems like, because you can get something versus nothing real damn quick out of that band, and it's $5. So I don't know what law enforcement's like now, but I've never met a cheaper group of men in my life than cops.
God, it depends on what it is. If you want to buy a fucking $70,000 truck, like you'll spend.
Yeah.
But
yeah, Ford Raptor's no big deal, but paying full price at the diner is a freaking sin. But the good cops are good cops, man. I like them a lot. And then as far as like the main movements and things of that nature, again, like our adage is we're looking for optimal training in suboptimal environments. If you just got off shift, man, like you're effed. It sucks. Your back's tight because you've been in kit or your undervest all day long or whatever it is you're wearing. And that has to be addressed, especially as father time starts to roll on. The no excuses mindset is great, but sometimes there's a very good reason to dial back the intensity. And if you show up smashed from the night before, or if you're on a call out till 2-3 in the morning, the recipe for success probably isn't rolling the dice on a 1-rep max for the main movement. Again, you can't train like a puss all the time, but if you need to pump the brakes and deload to a 3 or a 5 or even just a sled pull, the beauty of the conjugate system, again, it's not our invention, but the beauty of the system is your maximal strength's not going to suffer all that much or substantially in the week to week compared to deloading it for 3 weeks to train it once every month. You miss that 1 day a month, then you're going to really start to slump. So if our folks show up erect, we're going to pump the brakes. The goal is a 1-rep max because that's how we're truly training maximal strength. But if it's not in the cards for the day, we just adjust course. Again, this is the worst way to sell ebooks and things of that nature because it is brutally simple by design. The execution's difficult, don't get me wrong. But the answers in this stuff almost always lie in the simple approach to get from point A to point B so that we don't let it become so elaborate that it overshadows all those other things that have to be addressed by the tactical athlete, which is why we don't have blue check marks and cool guy stuff on Instagram. We just travel around working. It's not the most exciting thing.
So, I mean, with that said, where it's like, if you show up wrecked from just life in general, and you still are looking for a max effort for the day, and like, is it acceptable? Like you're dealing with like tweaks and injuries. Like, all right, it's max effort day. I'm only going to get 2 sessions in this week. and I would like to get 2 max efforts, but you know, like, all right, I can handle a load up to, I don't know, let's say 315 on a squat, but if I go over that, I feel like I'm going to get hurt. Like it might not be like a true max effort, but the bar's still moving at the same velocity, and you don't want to roll the dice on going heavier to get hurt. Is that count as a max effort day, or would that be something different?
So for the immediate, I mean, technically, yes. If you look at the max effort method, you're building to a 1 rep max for the day, a training max for the day. So if that velocity is there, you're training in the wheelhouse. If there's a variable, fatigue, injury, hangover, whatever it is, if there's a variable throwing you from that, you're probably still going to be at 90% of what you're capable of. So if you're a 400-pound squatter on your worst day, you're going to be in the wheelhouse of 360, give or take. So that's where we look at that of like, okay, cool. Maybe you'll get a couple singles at 85 or 90% to address the immediate for the day, which is, again, why the system, not my system, but the system itself takes care of us in the tactical space, because the stuff's already been done for us. So exactly what you're saying is our go-to approach for addressing that very real bugaboo that is fatigue based off of the professions. So if you're working out like this or training like this for your job, you're wanting to stay in your job. Like the best way to not get a concussion in football is to just not play football. Like then you can't get a concussion related to football. But if you're working out like this or training this way for your profession, it means you take it quite serious, and your physical conditioning revolves around professional demand. All that stuff, nothing's neutral. That's the downside of this space, is that nothing is neutral. So if your maximal strength's starting to suffer due to fatigue, we've got to find a way to get that back. And that's where working a little bit lower on the curve or at slightly lighter percentages, we're poking at it and supporting it, or ultimately slowing the bleeding, but it is starting to suffer. So being that we train maximal strength optimally, in a perfect world, we would train it twice a week, 4 weeks a month, but that's going to break you down pretty fast with all the external stressors that your job offers. So again, I mean, I don't want to just constantly repeat myself just for the sake of talking, but everything you've said is exactly how we address it. Like if we might build up to 85 or 90% and hit a few singles, nothing wrong with deloading on the fly. And that's like one of the big splits between conjugate based training or the West Side system and traditional Western periodization is we don't necessarily plan deloads. We're free to play that card as we see fit based off of immediate feedback. So instead of every 4th week deloading terribly structured, rigid, training, if you just feel like shit one day, just take it easy. If you start to take it too easy too often, then you're training like a puss, and we can't go that far left or right of the middle ground where everything works. So you're there.
Okay. Have you heard what I heard Wendler talking on something a while back? It was a couple months ago, maybe, but he talked about as you age, he was like, you don't have to squat that heavy to still be strong. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know what, like, as far as like looking at max efforts, aging, like that kind of stuff. Like I don't know that I'm ever going to PR my squat again. You know what I mean? So like, how do you balance that with all of this? And maybe it's all ego, you know what I mean? But like any insight into that?
Well, I mean, I don't know Jim Wendler personally or anything like that, but everything I've read or listened to him talk, it's a smart dude. So there's nothing wrong with anything he said. So it's not like a counterpoint necessarily.
Yeah.
But I think just understanding or having knowledge or a reason why included in your training versus just making any idiot can make another idiot tired, rather than just doing hard stuff for the sake of doing hard stuff, understanding why you're training a certain way or having an end result in mind is a great way to sort of save ourselves from ourselves. Because I mean, 30-year-old, 25-year-old Jason was a hell of a lot more aggressive than 39-year-old Jason with a kid, a mortgage, and businesses and things to run. But while all of these real world circumstances are coming across our plate, you also have the residual training effects of decades of strength training that you're not going to lose everything just because your squat has slumped 100 pounds from your absolute best. So in strength sports, where I'm amateur at best, if even that, In strength sports, that's a totally different conversation of letting your maxes suffer versus performance or professional based demand. And for us, we live on key performance indicators or KPIs to ensure that nothing is really suffering too bad. So like there's no such thing as too strong, all that. That's yes to all, but there is a point of diminishing returns for this tactical athletics concept, in that if you're a 500-pound squatter and everything is good, that may not be the root cause of everything being good. But if we flip back to the squat and deadlift manual, as well as the bench press manual written by Louis, he has the concept of the web in there, where you'll have a series of key performance indicators webbed together. And when these indicators are on par, then your 1 rep maxes should be, keyword is should, because you still have to train the strengths and the velocities, but your 1 rep maxes should be on par with where you need them. So that's how we develop ultimately things to train for, or key performance indicators. That's how we develop them and why we develop them. And if we're able to keep 3 to 5 tasks, whether it be a 1 rep max or max reps of kettlebell snatches in 2 minutes or something like that, if we can keep all these things balanced, then there's very little need to go too far beyond what those baseline numbers are. So if you're killing yourself to go from 500 to 515 and your performance everywhere else in the web or professionally is starting to suffer, we'll let that go and keep you at 500. And then we can talk about how to go into holding patterns and not necessarily plateauing, but there's the point of diminishing returns where slaying yourself for an extra 5 pounds on the barbell may not be the best use of your time. So all those kind of things can balance out, but that's spoken strictly from my experience, not platform-based sports where I've got my foot in that pool years ago, and it didn't really go long enough for me to be educated on how long-term 20-year, 30-year power lifters and strongman sports and things like that, or strength sports, excuse me, such as strongman, how that might impact the mindset or the performance of the athlete. I would just simply look for a number. We don't use, we don't use body weight multiples or anything like that. But when you identify these KPIs or these top ranges that you need to be at, we just maintain those. And if they suffer over the years, they're going to suffer. But the relationship between the special strengths and your KPIs or your personal web, it's never really that far off, provided you're not contesting those 1 rep maxes in sport.
Okay. Yeah, so it's basically having a series of like indicators rather than just one thing.
Correct. For our space, like the fastest way for you and I, or the three of us as strength coaches, to add pounds to a 1 rep max is probably force feed our athletes, prevent them from running or doing any aerobic/anaerobic work, and repurpose all that energy to accessories, heavy barbells, and maximal strength training. But professional requirements aren't going to let that happen. So we find sort of the contrast, where if your 1 rep max in the bench press is 365 and your volume of push-ups is 100, and then we see your push-ups go to 80 and your bench press has slipped to 315. It's like, well, okay, those two things are directly related. And luckily we've got a staff of people that help organize all this data and give us some science behind it, because doctors are better to talk to about this than myself. But people with PhDs are freaking creepy, man, in a good way. But that's how we look at it, because there is so much more to address than one specific strength on one certain day, that we would want to have almost the antithesis of a certain strength in another facet of the athletic plan. So if your 1 mile time is X and something hamstring inclusive, such as perhaps the Romanian deadlift or just the deadlift itself, if those two things are on par with where you need them, cool. We can go into a maintenance pattern and train you more often than not 90 to 95% versus constantly pushing new PRs with 1 rep maxes. We can probably put that person in a holding pattern to maintain that standard deadlift, and then pursue the aerobic base or the gas tank needed to push them through the faster run or maintain the run. And once we've got you where you're at an acceptable level for your profession, remember, there's a million other things to train. Like if we've got you where you need to be physically, then turn that person over to combatives, turn them into a better fighter, or something more professional based, driving, medic, you name it, any of those other skills that our folks have to have that take them away from sport, ball sports or string sports, give all that time to those other subject matter experts.
Okay, that makes sense. Like you have the requisite amount of strength, and we're just getting diminishing returns on everything else. So let's like back that off a hair and reallocate that volume to other things.
Very much so, and a lot of it's the time too. Like I don't care if you're a 1,000-pound squatter or you're struggling to get to depth in an air squat due to mobility. We've all got 24 hours in the day, and really when you start thinking of this broader stroke stuff, and that's where we've been fortunate, in that we've been working long before conjugate tactical became a thing. So the relationships we've got with some of our folks is like, yeah, dude, like you don't need to be here for 2 hours with us. Like, get your shit done with us, and then get over there and train something much more mentally demanding or physically demanding than step ups or something like that. Like weight room commandos don't make real commandos. So we want to give those guys time back versus just taking it simply for the sake of doing more gym stuff.
Gotcha. I do like the idea of being force fed though, and not doing any aerobics. Like that sounds like a plan.
Oh, dude. And trust me, like we were doing a hell more grappling when I was a cop because we would often be on the ground with people.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, several years went by, and you forget what that gas tank is like, and you're just getting mauled again. It's like, so it was wonderful, omitting aerobic and anaerobic for quite a while, and just eating a lot of damn food. It was great. And then all of a sudden, reality came crashing back down. It's like, oh God, dude, life is hard in the 260, so I don't want to be there anymore.
Time to die.
Surefire recipe for success. If your 1-rep maxes are suffering, just quit everything else and focus solely on maximal strength. But the idea of trade-offs, like it's not the right call for our style of athlete or our demographic. That's where, I mean, if you're true, I mean, I don't know when you publish these if the video goes with it or not, but if you have your hand 2 feet off of the table and that's your true maximal strength, what you're absolutely capable of, layering in aerobic endurance and gas tank and explosive power, combatives, other skills, everything's drawing you away from your true potential and reducing it a little bit. But per Louis Simmons, he's got a lot of videos and stuff from old seminars too, that even, with the conjugate system, you're going to launch from a base of 90% of what you're capable of. I'm taking that for our guys, and I'll take a 310 bench press in lieu of a 315, mainly because it's fun watching guys lose their mind if they can't use 3 plates on everything. But I'll take a 310 bench press in lieu of 315 if that means our folks are going to have enough gas in the tank or enough of an aerobic or anaerobic base to keep themselves healthy and safe. The trade-offs have to be there, and balancing and understanding the special strengths is how that's done. What that sounds like or looks like for different people. For us, the goal is not to have, a figurehead telling you how it has to be Charlie Manson style or anything like that. But whatever your flavor of this stuff looks like, for what it's worth, we're big fans of balancing your special strengths versus highlighting the one that you excel at. It's all done to support the profession as opposed to showcasing any one facet of this.
How would you suggest working through injuries, whether it be a nagging tendonitis type thing or like a more traumatic blown bicep,
I mean, main thing is acknowledge they exist. Right. Our folks are darn gnarly as far as athletes and professions go. If you tell someone to do something, they're going to bite down and find a way to get through it or compensate their way through it. But for us, if it is like a bicep injury or any sort of movements are causing pain and getting that person further away from healing up, everything from reducing range of motion in the barbell lifts or working around injury with accessories, things of that nature. So, if you've got a strained pec and you can still train to a little bit, let's train a 4-board bench press in lieu of a cambered bar bench press or something like that. And again, it's not rocket science, terribly elaborate answers, but just taking the immediate feedback at hand and being able to work through it has to be there, because our folks do get beat up and banged up quite regularly, whether, just as you mentioned, it's the slow onset of atrophying muscles or a loss of mobility due to being sedentary, or some sort of traumatic injury, like you blow out an ankle or something like that. We can't let ourselves suffer too much because you're never really off season.
Right.
So we're really looking to get in whatever you possibly can safely. And like our biggest go-to, like at our course when we do it, is we assume most of our folks are going to start from a point of injury or lack of mobility. So we want to squat you to a safe depth where the mechanics are there, and we can pursue added range in time. So we'd almost draw from that pool versus rewriting the script. Deadlifting will pull you from an elevated position versus from the floor, if applicable. Reducing the ROM and bench press, things like that will keep you from straining those injured areas. And then we can always find a way to do something, even if it's just walking. And we have a gal who blew her knee out, and as soon as she's bouncing back from surgery, she's just waiting to come in and get on the Echo bikes, so like the Airdyne bikes, the fan bikes.
Yeah.
Get on one of those, and she's just going to pump that thing with arms only because she can't bend her knee.
Yep.
So it's like the no excuses thing. There's a time and a place for it where we can poo-poo on it as far as being impractical, but there's always a way to keep moving forward. So unfortunately, our guys and gals don't have the luxury of just complete off season because everything's suffer. So if we can't train any one thing, we can double down on something else to make up for it for sure.
So if you have, like, let's say a bicep, you tear your biceps, your upper body's pretty much out of the way. Are you going to change those workout days? Are you going to change the max effort days, or just kind of try and keep them the same and you have less workout days with your just lower body, I'm saying?
Yeah, well, with like a serious injury, like a torn bicep or a blown off bicep, probably not going to train maximal strength. And I'm not trying to split hairs, but we're probably going to truly train maximal strength regardless if it's upper or lower. So the body's a little bit more primed for recovery versus introducing more, not necessarily injury, but more stimulus that your body has to adapt to. We're probably going to pump the brakes across the board, and we can still theme our days. And if we look at max effort or dynamic, as far as following the West Side system, ultimately you have northern and southern hemisphere. You have upper body, lower body, where we would still get the upper body work in that we can do, but with a present injury, I'm not going to have that person, even if it's a bicep, I'm not going to put a barbell on that person's back and max them out when they could be repurposing that energy or that, those internal processes that heal the body. Yeah. That towards that damaged area versus splitting it across the board to everything from the CNS to, repairing for hypertrophy and things of that nature. A big injury, your best efforts need to go into recouping and recovering that. And that's how I would do it. Where if we can get accessories like biceps off, we can hit back extensions and crunches and things of that nature. Very low impact, not necessarily insulting, but almost insulting exercises compared to what most folks are capable of. Like you get a gnarly dude like post fight, or some of the guys from some of the cooler units we get to work with, and he's got a sprained ankle. It's like, fuck it, I'll just put it on a bucket and bench press. It's like, yes, for sure you can do that, but man, pump the brakes. Don't forget, if you're running the system, you've got a good base of maximal strength that's not going to suffer terribly with a few weeks off. Yeah. And we can build, it'll come right back with training. But we oftentimes see people like double down a little bit too hard on that hardcore mindset. So usually if injuries are starting to show up, it's time to start relaxing a bit anyway. And that's where we can draw back based off immediate demand, whether it be injury or fatigue. Fatigue is usually the precursor to an injury. So hopefully we can get you there, at least prevent any weight room injuries. Professional demand, like, dude, cops are going to tear shoulders. That's just the way it goes. Like firemen are going to hurt their back, go down from exposure. Mill dudes are going to roll ankles and any number of injuries. There's only so much you can do to mitigate that on the front end with injury prevention. Should something happen, we can adapt to it pretty quickly though. But unfortunately, a lot of it is saving our folks from ourselves or themselves, excuse me.
Yeah. I've actually read that if you have, so like you tear your left bicep, if you work that right side, it'll also help that right side grow while it's injured, even if you're not working it.
Yeah. I've heard similar things in that nature. That goes a little bit above my pay grade as far as execution of training. So it's hard for myself to take a hard stance on that stuff. Cause I've been fortunate as far as injuries go, and I just can't draw from personal experience of having done that. Biggest thing I know for a bicep tear, and a further reminder of how untough I am, is squatting out at Westside with a dude named Jason Coker out there. Tore his bicep right off, finished squatting, finished training, entire dynamic day, lower body dynamic day. I believe it was dynamic, either dynamic or max effort, whatever. Blew his bicep off on a camber bar, finished training, looked cool. He's like, bicep peak, hell yeah. And I don't think he ever did get it repaired. So that would be the dude to talk to about what actually happens with a bicep tear. But I have read similar, very much so. Yeah.
Yeah. That's one of those PhD things.
Mm-hmm. Luckily for us, like I know exactly when I'm out class, I'm reminded of it weekly, if not daily. And some of the guys and gals on the team, when it comes into those specialization areas, I'd rather have you talk to Chad Malone, a doctor of physical therapy, about what's going on with internal processes, or John Quint with joint space and things of that nature. Because I think at least a human being, especially me, can only focus so much on certain things. And we're doubling and quadrupling down on each of our little lanes of approach, versus trying to go broad spectrum for every subject under the strength conditioning umbrella. I'm just flat out outclassed in a lot of areas. Yes. So again, I don't know if it's right or wrong. I've read it, and there's a degree of truth to it, or it wouldn't be repeated and replicated and proven. I just personally, from experience, can't draw anything from it of value. That's one thing. Having been punched in the mouth a lot of times for reasons that I deserve as well as not deserve, we try not to overstep our bounds into too many areas and get in hot water for areas where you just probably, I don't know, is the right answer, versus giving people a load of insulting, getting punched in the mouth again.
Yeah.
No, just make it up. Like, that's just, you don't know the answer, just make it up.
That's exactly like I mean, you know how I do it, man. Just start talking fast and say a lot of numbers until people just quit listening.
Dude, I tell you what, I think one of the first times I heard Louis talk was on Barbell Shrugged, and I was like, oh my God, this is so amazing. But I had to keep running it back and listening over and over. And I was like, wait, what are those percentages? What is he talking about? And I'd run it back. I listened to the same like 5 minutes of that show probably 20 times.
Oh, yeah.
It was like exhausting.
Oh, it's nuts, especially like I've gone to like 3-hour lunches with the man, and you just don't even know where it's going. But that's where we've always got notebooks with constantly, because you just don't know when like knowledge bombs are coming.
Yeah.
So you just scratch them down, and then a day later, like, I don't even know what this freaking means. Like, I hope it comes back to me. But I mean, that dude, especially when he starts firing off statistics and meet records and things like that of, you know, lifter X back in October '89 pulled this and that. Like, okay, like, I know exactly how much I don't know about this, and that's why I'm going to shut up and write things down versus argue.
Yeah.
And you're spot on, man. That dude was 1 in a million with that kind of stuff.
So one thing I did take away from that, like every time I've heard Lou talk, but and then what you just said about recovering from injuries is like, it's just a game of like total volume and allocation of the volume in a lot of ways, right?
I mean, if you, even on the front end, if you look at like soft tissue work of just accumulating thousands and thousands of reps of red band push downs or ankle weight leg extensions or leg curls and things of that nature, all of that constant volume is priming the body to be, the soft tissue of the body, be more resilient, a little bit less prone to injury. And it works on the back end too, of keeping all this movement and the blood flow and the recovery that this ultra high volume work does. Granted, I mean, it's not as simple as just get to 10,000 pounds,
right?
Because then do 10 deadlifts at 1,000 pounds and have the same end result. But the way the body's processes and the muscle fibers and stuff respond to different percentages, load, time under tension, etc. That's where you can start to balance a lot of this stuff out and do a lot of good. So, you know, if you find that you're deadlifting heavy, but part of that equation is deadlifting heavy and feeling well, part of that equation is you're also performing, you know, 1,000 leg curls a week against a green band. That's not an insignificant amount of time under tension for that muscle fiber. And even though a green band isn't necessarily like a pin select hamstring machine or anything like that, there's still a level of volume that's accumulated through that work, and it has to be present. But very much so. I mean, if you injure yourself lifting a weight, your body is not primed for that volume, so you have to find a way to get there, and it's accumulated through the accessories, and then it's displayed with the primary movement.
Awesome. I like it.
Yeah.
What else you got? Nothing. We're out of stuff to talk about. What else you got?
Dude, I got nothing, man. We're shifting gears. Our buddies from Canada are coming back to America for the first time in like 3 years. So they're coming in this afternoon. Get a workout in on this.
You're bringing socialists in?
Shit, dude, these guys are fucking awesome. Tony and his group up there.
Oh shit. Yeah, I met Tony and I haven't talked to him in a long ass time, but I met him in Lions Not Sheep in like Sean Whalen's little online group. And it turned out that you're talking about Garage Gym, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, just to make sure I'm talking about the same person. It's weird how small a lot of things are, but I saw him in that group and I reached out because he was a cop and introduced myself. And it turns out like one of his original members at his gym went to my gym, and like it was just real weird. So he's coming in tomorrow.
Yeah, he'll be here this afternoon. But yeah, I met him out at Jim Jones in Utah with some buddies out there, and then we figured out we're only 3.5 hours from one another because he's just over the border outside of Windsor, Detroit. So then, prior to the COVIDs, we were training and hanging out regularly, and we never would have even known each other existed had we not traveled all the way to Utah. You know what I mean? So it's weird, but yeah, those guys are coming down, and it'll be exciting to see them again. So I think they're grown-ups with the gym world too. So now I'm going to try and scramble and get my gym cleaned up so he doesn't yell at me, because you've been out, like the garbage can doesn't have like water bottle and power bar wrappers in it. It's just energy drinks and beer cans and like so try not to get yelled at by those guys. I haven't seen them in a very long time. So
yeah, clean your bathroom. Make sure the light works.
Well, there's things to focus on. Like we can only do so much, and certain thing I'm not real worried about if the walls are painted fresh colors. We probably should paint the bathroom walls. We haven't painted them in 14 years. Probably give them a little spruce up, but we could either do that or like put more equipment in the floor. I don't know what the hell the answer is, but try and get this place cleaned up for those dudes and everyone that's coming in tomorrow, and that's it. So we can talk about anything you want or nothing at all. There's always something going on out here, but unfortunately it's just always the same thing.
So one of the best experiences I had was coming in for the kettlebell class. And when I got to the front door, I'm not sure if you still have it up or not, but you had that sign.
It's there.
The sign basically says, like, get the fuck out of here. We're not taking members. It's so awesome.
It says this is a private gym. We're not taking any new members right now. Sorry for the inconvenience. That's I would not hang something that mean up. I literally apologize for being the way that I am in print on a window. But yeah, we just, with my workload and stuff like that, it's not fair for people to join the gym and expect a degree of coaching of what it was 8 years ago or something like that. A degree of coaching and attention that we just can't offer them. And it's not fair to the paying members that come here to be expected to forfeit all of their training time to bring people up to snuff. So our whole thing has always been the right people find the gym, and then the right people stay. So like if it's a good fit for you, everyone's welcome to train. And if it doesn't work, whether because we just can't do what you want or you just don't like how we run shop, I'd rather vet with a simple Word document taped to a window than just tell people like, yeah, get in here, train. And then, I mean, you won't see me for a month, but you know, that kind of stuff. Yeah. But yeah, that sign has definitely become a bigger focal point than I ever really thought it would be. And it made sense. Like post-COVID, we used COVID to disappear. So we rebranded the gym and all that kind of stuff, took the website down. And then I'm not going to lie, just when everyone's a little bit nervous about so much going on, like I really don't like with that COVID thing. I don't really care what anyone's view on it is. Like do what you think is best for you and your family. But we straight up were just, yeah, the whole world's pretty standoffish about 6 feet, this, that, and the other. So now you can't come in here. And then it turns out having that sign on the door prevented us from having to deal with a lot of people. So we just never took it down.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I figured it was. I was like, why didn't I think to do that when I had my gym? That would have solved a lot of problems.
It's tough. I mean, with what a lot of people want in the strength and conditioning world, and it's not trying to sound like a dick or anything like that, but what a lot of people want, we just don't do. And it's not because we're better than anybody or worse than anybody or anything like that, but it's like going to McDonald's and asking for an oil change. Like there's just certain places to go for certain things. And when it comes to like boot camp style classes or one-on-one personal training and things of that nature, just due to the workload that I have / we have, we can't give you a quality product. And if you're giving someone hundreds of dollars for something, I'd rather someone walk out of here calling us dicks for not doing what they asked than calling us charlatans for taking their money and then not doing what they asked. So the easiest way to do it is just put up a sign that says no. Gives us all the time in the world we need to think of what we can take on or what we can't do, which is, again, a terrible business model. So it works though for us.
Yeah, no, I think it does. It works. It works for everybody because then at least you know what the expectations are. Like, you know how to manage your expectations, I guess, coming into it.
Yeah, we try. I mean, we've been in an industry that, I mean, it wears you out pretty quick in the fitness industry for sure. But we built a nice life. Try not to treat people like shit, and we've gotten to do some cool things. So it's like at this point, man, I'm almost 40. Like, we can't change who we are now, nor do we really want to. But the last thing to do is to really use your platform or your position, whatever the hell you want to call it, and just start scumbagging people directly. Like, no matter what you do, people aren't going to like you. There's no way, shape, or form you're going to have 100% success rate. But if detouring people from joining a gym that they don't even want to be in, we just have an elaborate sales pitch. If detouring them from joining this place because it's not a good fit gets us poo-pooed on, that's fine. Like, I don't think we've ever gotten a member from Google reviews or Yelp or anything like that. So.
Well, it's respectable because nowadays a lot of places are just going that other route and just taking people's money to get more money. So
it's weird, man. But that's what they said when we're in the last month. I've been on both coasts and everywhere, a few places in between. And so a lot of it is like the demographic too. But for us in Northwest Indiana or the Midwest in general, I think a lot of folks out here are a lot more direct in what they want or expect versus being a lot more susceptible to marketing and things of that nature, like Southern California or some of that stuff where there's just so much going on and so many people and that whole side of the coin. It's like, we live in a town of 15,000 people. Like, the bar next door, you're going to run into the guy who probably just left the gym, kind of thing, So it just allows us to stay kind of who we are, and then hopefully make things better, not worse, by, like you said, any number of motivation people might have out there for whatever it is they say to people. Ours is just like, we're pretty okay. You don't join the gym, but if we let the wrong person in, or we start to get labeled as, the assembly line where we just get you out the door, bill you, that's going to go against everything we've built. And for us, the right answer was just to button the gym up. And every once in a while, someone will see the sign and they'll be like, I see that you're not taking members, but I want to work out here. So I'm like, so work out here, man. Like, that's cool. Like, but you're not taking members. I'm like, yeah, I know. And then kind of see where that goes. And if that person doesn't punch me in the head within like the first 10 minutes, it's like, all right, dude, you'll probably be a good fit here. And then just same thing, like, explain to them, like, all the travel, the this, that, and the other. Like, you can't get mad at us if the door doesn't get open, because my helpers that get a key or a slight discount on their dues, they don't actually help or do anything. So it's like, this whole damn thing's a train wreck, but we keep a couple in the fridge as an apology if we screw you over. Like, sorry.
I'm so mad, but there's a beer. I'm okay.
But like, I have a hard time when people are making fun of Planet Fitness for having like pizza and stuff. It's like, awesome. Like, why wouldn't you want to have that? Come in here and there's just grown men, like, they literally just come here to drink instead of the bar next door. I'm like, get the fuck out of the gym. Like, I can understand having a beer like after you get done training or something, because there's only 3 or 4 dozen of us that work out here, and I mean, everyone knows everyone. So I can understand, like, hey, man, let's get to, we just got done working out, grab a couple beers and hang out before we have to go back into dad mode or something. But like, sometimes we have people that come here exclusively to meet and drink. Like, no, God damn it. Like, you can't just on the sidewalk and drink beer. Like, they're going to call the cops. Like, that's not how, like, you can't do that. So it definitely spirals off the rails as well. But luckily everyone here is usually, they've gotten pretty used to, like, it'll be like a long lull of silence, And then all of a sudden, like everything's wrong. Everyone's getting yelled at. And then one of the guys will bring like a present, or like the girls will wear like tighter leggings or something. And I'll get in a better mood. I'm like, all right, like gym, we'll keep the gym. I'm not going to burn it down today. We're doing all right. So there's not a lot of layers to this onion, man.
Well, is there anything else that you're promoting? Anything that you wanted to say to the 6 people that are going to listen to this podcast?
Not really, man. I mean, we're pretty even keel with how we work. We've got the coaches course at the end of March out at Westside. We're doing it there this time instead of here. But that's sold out. So that was like an whole other thing when like we actually sell out. It's not just a marketing tool to get people to sign up real quick. Like, no, we cap it so that we can try and do a good job versus like we try to take care of 24 people versus 2,500 people. Like, can't do a good job there. But that's sold out, and we don't have a second one planned for the year yet. So there's really nothing to promote or plug. Our website still isn't done because that sucks. So there's no store to even buy things from. Like the gym's not taking members. So I truly have nothing to promote. By the time this airs, the fundraiser is going to be over with anyway. So yeah, like I'd rather talk to you guys about training, and that's cool.
Okay. Cool. Well, yeah. So the fundraiser will be a year from now.
No, it'll be at the end of this year. So the one we're doing now was supposed to be done in December of 22.
Oh, okay.
Christmas and well, I mean, it's perfect time. Like everyone's usually traveling for the holidays, so their schedules are pretty open. No one really holds like a quote unquote real meet, that you'd train for and things like that around Christmas time. So it's just a chance to basically deload for a couple of days and come pull barbells. And I'm the first to admit, like the lifting in the actual event itself is pretty much just the catalyst to get people to the raffle table. We have people that sign up and don't even care. Like, I'm not deadlifting. I just want to try and win that, or like the hypervolt, or like there's a expensive bottle of tequila and things like that. So they're like, I don't even know what a deadlift is. I'm just here to win shit. So Christmas time is the perfect time for us to do that. But with the holidays being on Saturdays this last year, it bumped us forward. And then same Tony up in Canada, first weekend they could get down here was the 18th of February or tomorrow. So it's like, right, like this whole thing literally revolves around just the fact that I miss my friends up in Canada. So we set a schedule, and this year we'll be able to do it closer to Christmas time for the set pull through 7. That will somewhere around if everything works out as it's supposed to. But yeah, hopefully you guys can make it out, man. It's pretty loaded this year. We've got 48. That's all right. Like 48 lifters, I think. And then the raffle table's pretty stocked. Texas Power Bars, they've donated a barbell every year, the deadlift bar, and we raffle that off. Westside's got a bunch of gift cards, some Rogue gift cards, a bunch of different stuff up there. So it ends up being a pretty fun day. Then the brewery next door, they open their a bit early for us so we can go in there for a couple, and people stick around for lunch, and it's pretty fun. But like I said, there's nothing to promote because it won't even be available for like another 8 months, 10 months.
All right. Well, scratch that then. So, but
we'll either see you tomorrow or December, one of the two.
Well, cool, man. Well, thanks for jumping on, and yeah.
Hell yeah. Hopefully I didn't say anything too stupid. Oh yeah. Yeah. Hopefully you guys can make it tomorrow, man. It'd be fun to see you.